Yeah, it was good. Good feeling. It was not really waiting for games. I think mentally everybody had gotten to the point that we were going to have to win out. We weren't really the scoreboard watching with an expectation. But it is a great reminder of how hard it is, this league, and the accomplishment of getting to the top 16 is difficult. And this is, this idea is respectful. You've got an awful lot of Stanley Cup rings in that room in Pittsburgh. And you get a team that probably gets to the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning that's on back-to-back nights that's going to miss the playoffs. And you play hard, you lose. Like, that's how tough it is. So it's a reminder of kind of what we've been through for the last 2.5 months. And the accomplishment that was made. So everybody, a different feel at the rink for sure today. There's an unusual lack of tension, the right amount of lack of tension on an off day. We haven't had a lack of tension in our off days, so it felt good today.
Looking at the journey to get to this point, what are you most proud of?
There'd be two, the grind that was at the start, but there'd be two really critical stretches. The last 2 weeks in January was stacked upon our December, where we got really beat up from the schedule. I thought was the 3 sets of back-to-backs in 2 weeks, and a lot of guys playing injured, and we came out above 500 in that against good teams. That was an impressive accomplishment. And then I would say from the All-Star break on, the push that they put on and the way they come together. So those 2 blocks. So we had a major changeover to our team, which brought adversity kind of to the start. Over the course of the summer, the schedule, the injuries, losing center iceman, as many games as we lost down the middle is a huge thing to try to overcome. So there was adversity this year, and we had hard games and hard losses. But they handled the adversity and they survived it, and I think they built a team out of themselves through it.
Do you think that adversity can really help a team going into the playoffs? I mean, you look at the team last year, they didn't face any adversity, and they kind of lost pretty quickly to the Lightning there. Do you think it kind of helps build them towards the playoffs?
There's so much discomfort in the playoffs from the style of hockey game, from the pain of the losses, for sure, the emotional swing. And we've been through that now. And that's been the biggest challenge. And you look at those other teams, as I had said, there's going to be games in this 6-week stretch where you absolutely feel you have to win them and you lose them. And you're seeing it happen, right, with the other teams. And we just did a better job of handling our losses and getting off the mat and playing hard the next night. So that is what playoff hockey is. There's going to be 16 really good teams, and they'll all have enough talent to win for sure. Depth is the key, but handling your mood swings. Your emotional ups and downs of playoff hockey.
Is there any sense of vindication that everything kind of worked out? I mean, that you guys stuck to the system, you played through the hard times, and I mean, you've got a long way to go. Still.
Yeah, I think there's the appropriate sense of achievement, not in terms of making the playoffs, but achievement in terms of defining your game, and we do still have a ways to go with that. But changing to a game that will be played in the playoffs is a hard thing to do.
Were you really surprised the way everything played out? If anybody's been telling us over the last few weeks, teams are going to win, teams are going to lose, don't assume anything, that's been you. So
right.
You guys have been consistent, and the other teams kind of fell off a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes experience helps a little bit. Right? You've been in the grind. I think the first 18, 19 years of my career were teams not as good as this that were grinding with a hope to make the playoffs, and that mental toughness that your team has to develop. There's some learned things in there. Handling a loss is an important thing, and then being honest about your game the entire year is an important thing. So we had some fairly graphic and direct meetings this year on games that we didn't play where we needed to, and then we've lost some games that we played damn well, and I treated them the way they should have been treated after that. So I think there's an honesty here. These guys did achieve something for me. They went from being in some ways a soft perimeter team to a team that knows how to play hard. Now, doing it every night's a challenge, as I said. You got all those Stanley Cup rings in Pittsburgh, and they played hard last night. It's a hard thing to do to be good consistently in this league.
Alex Lyon, could you go back to when you first had to use them and how comfortable you were? Now it's all worked out, and
yeah,
the game's progressed.
There's a major change in visual style. Style and what you see on the ice. What he showed you the first time he came in was just pure battle. the closest thing for the people that been around the game might be Tim Thomas in terms of barrel rolls in the crease and gloves coming off and throwing everything at him, to a guy who's kind of settled in the crease and very efficient right now. And some of that's just confidence, right? Settle your game down, get back to tracking pucks. So there's been a fairly significant style change for him, and some of that's just comfort level. And then I think that the win against Boston for him was kind of the connection to the team, so that when he stepped back in the net the next night, and we didn't win the next time he went back in, but there was a real comfort level with him going in and a belief that he could do it. That was the end of as tough a stretch of hockey as I've ever seen in terms of back-to-backs and playoff teams, and we were beat up at the time. He goes in and God, he was fantastic in that game. We scored with, what was it, 4.7 left, and we stayed in the fight. So there's your, to George's question earlier, like, there's your learned event, right? You stay in it and you score that late, you win it over team against the best team at the end of a very tough, and he's the guy in the net. So he gets back into the net with full confidence of our group.
It still seems to
Maybe even more than that, though, because in between the two blocks after Spencer left, he's practicing with us. And in his practices, he did that, right? Like, we do that, I don't know if you watch, but we do the simple 3-on-0 shooting drill. And sometimes they get 3 cracks at it. And every once in a while, he'd stop all 3, right? That almost stops practice because it's so hard to do. So that's where you kind of build that belief with your team in practice.
He still seems to pull off.
Moving forward with them?
Once or twice, yes.
Well,
I do have one.
Will you share it?
No, I won't. No, and you're going to now have to get used to that, because as we get closer, you're not looking for any advantage, but you're certainly not going to help the other team prepare. So there'll be game time decisions,
One more question on,
if that's fair. I kind of I give you more during the year to be, so that, because you got a job to do, and it's chasing who's the goalies every night can be no fun, but we get to playoffs and we'll keep that pretty close.
That said, how important is it to get Sergei Bobrovsky into a game? Since he
I
hasn't played since
don't
last
think it's critical.
You don't think
It's,
so?
I don't think it's first and foremost.
So with Alex, he still seems to pull off like one of those barrel roll type saves
Yeah.
a game. Is that like the perfect blend where he can
It's
be calm and
that he
then
constantly shows that he's not giving up on a play, right? He's not so much a slave to technique and positioning that that sometimes the effort almost of the position comes out because you just got to be standing in the perfect spot. So he leaves it all out there.
And he's been telling us the last couple of weeks that we've been kind of sleeping on his experience in the playoffs last year. Obviously, he's a Calder Cup champion. How much do you value him going through that now in this process?
The mental grind of it. It would be the same. I understand the shooters are different, all that, but what you would need to do to run to a championship in the American Hockey League is still going to be 4 series, and it's going to be hard hockey, and you're going to have losses, and you're not necessarily traveling on a plane every time either. Like, it's a grinder for those guys. So that's a really important thing. It's why the American Hockey League, I think, is so important for goaltenders to get those kind of games.
Paul, whether you finish 7th or 8th, you start on the road, what do you like about your team right now, and why should this team not be overlooked?
I like the fact that we can handle parts of our game. So the things that have changed for us over the year, I think when we got scored on early, we opened our game way too fast. We weren't comfortable in that. We tried to chase the game, and we didn't have many comebacks. And the challenge in our record isn't our wins or our regulation wins. We're top 10 for those things. We lost too many games in overtime, or didn't get them to overtime because we had opened up, and that disappeared in the last. We gave up the first goal in some pretty critical games, and our game didn't change, and we actually built as the game went on. And the first goal isn't an indicator necessarily of who owns the game. So that kind of confidence built into our game that we now have an understanding of. We just stay in the fight, just stay in the fight.
You said for a while you thought tomorrow's game would end up being do or die. Now that
I did.
it isn't, does that change the approach at all for you guys tomorrow?
No, we will try to finish as far up in our standings as we possibly can. We'll dress our best lineup for that game tomorrow.
What if you know tonight, but if Montreal takes care of the Islanders?
That would change things.
That would change it. So tomorrow morning, you could have a different mindset.
Correct. I have 2 mindsets now. I just don't know which one I get to use. Just decide which one. The game will affect what we do.
And it's not like you can rest. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to rest all their players. Who are you going to rest? You don't have Bennett. So you
No,
only got
but
one
if you
guy.
get skates dropped off at your house in the morning, George, you're in, man.
And then
with Alex, do you talk to goalies, or do you leave them alone, or do you?
Only talk to goalies if I think there's a mindset thing that I'd like to talk to them. That's a position that you have to spend a lifetime. You have to have played it to fully understand it. I'm more about body language in the net, if a guy's having a good run, I pretty much, how you doing? Good to see you. You know, we just have a casual non-hockey conversations. Great job. But there wouldn't be, I would offer no technical advice ever. But if I see a guy who's struggling, we'll grab him, we'll have a little conversation about where he's at. More than that. When a guy's rolling, don't touch his pads, don't touch his stick, just stay the hell away from his locker.
Is that how you've done with him through this, or have you?
No, I mean, we had quite a few conversations going back to when he first came in, just getting to know each other. And then as they get on a run, you leave them.
He's an interesting fella. I mean, I would
Yep.
think he's more chatty than most goalies.
Early on, just about his life experiences, how he got to this point, how he views his game. Some guys need to be wired to go into the net. Some guys need to be so totally mellow you're not even sure if they're awake. It's just they're different personalities, and they do get into a routine one way or the other, and sometimes they'll get off their path and not even know it. They'll get more wound up than they should, or they'll try to deflect and be calm when they're not instead of just accepting it. So try to get to know with your goalies what their path is. What is it that they need around them, the mood around them, the mentality around them to be good? And just try to watch for it to see if you think they're still on the right path.
Do you feel like you guys have learned that about him in the last, like, he came in and wasn't with this team last year,
Yeah,
right? Like,
you know what? I mean, the guy, Robbie Tallis, is the coach of the goalies. And he has all those conversations you're asking me about daily with them, and he's in tune with them. And I think what Robbie's great at is he's more than just a technical goalie guy. He understands, especially at times, kind of that backup grinder mentality as a goaltender. So he can relate to them in the way. And then we just turn them loose, right? One coach, 2 or 3 goalies, it's an easy job.
Is there anything new with Sam Bennett? Does he skate today?
He did not skate today. He hasn't progressed as fast as we want. That still doesn't necessarily keep him out, but we need the next 3 or 4 days to see an upswing. But he won't play tomorrow. Anybody else got anything? Because I'm not talking to you guys for another 2 weeks. We'll all agree to that?
Do you agree with that statement, and why? If your players are saying that.
Oh, I agree with that, but that's got nothing to do with the Florida Panthers. There's 16 teams, and they can all win. One of my assistant coaches, Jamie Collins, got a Stanley Cup ring coming in the 8th seed. So it's just real. These teams are all too good. I mean, you hit Boston, they're historic. They're at 133. They've got better depth probably than any other team in the NHL, but your top-end talent, and every one of the 16's top-end talent is good, right? That's there. It's depth. Goaltenders play a huge part in this. So any one of these 16 teams is a legitimate contender. That's how hard it is to get in. And there's probably 5 teams that won't get in that are damn good teams that could go on a run.
Is that a message you preach moving forward, that the LA Kings were the 8th seed, slipped in, and they went 69?
When we talked about that right from the very start, like, it's a mistake that you see teams make that they think you take making the playoffs for granted. Because it only takes 2 or 3 injuries or your schedule getting tough at a bad time for you. We got into that December, and that's a tough schedule, and we had a whole bunch of guys get sick that you will never find out about it because it's the flu, or it's they're playing, or they take 4 days to get back to normal. And you say, this guy's really struggling, and say, yeah, he's been throwing up for 3 days, but he's in our lineup. So that's all it takes before you get into a different band and you are fighting for your life and you are surviving. And that's where we found ourselves this year. And I think we understood that could happen with the changeover this year, but they fought their way through it.
With that said, do you buy into the regular season mattering? Some of your best games this year have been against the 3 teams, and one of them you're going to play.
I don't think the record matters in the regular season at all. I think that if you finish with 133 points, you're better than everybody else. That's just a fact. But no, I don't think it is. I mean, we've had playoff series. We beat Boston 1 year, and they beat us 4 straight in the regular season. So, but we had to take them. It was Game 7 before we could find a way to do that. But I don't, but I do believe if you finish first, you're better than everybody else. Everybody else is an underdog, right? They're just, Boston right now is better than every other team in the league. But we're not playing 40 games, right? 7 at the most.
Coach Barkov said that a big reason that this team is in the position they're in is you believing in them through the highs and lows. You've obviously gone through a lot in your coaching career. What was the key to maybe managing some of those ups and downs throughout the course of the season to be able to get to getting into the playoffs?
Well, belief is one, because I got through 5 days of training camp and I knew they were tougher than they thought, because that was a brutal camp, and they never quit. Like they slowed down, they got beat up, but they never quit. So you kind of left going, all right, these guys they're tougher than they think. They just don't know how tough this will be. So that belief was not because I'm a really nice person or I have a big belief gene in me. I just saw it. I also knew it was going to be really hard for them, and that keeping their spirits up when it was hard and keeping that and letting them know the belief I had when it was hard, I thought that would be important.
How important is, just for, and this is it for me since we're not talking anymore, but.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So to have Sergei Bobrovsky is one heck of a support guy for Alex. I mean, a veteran guy's been through it all.
Yeah.
He seems to be supportive and help out and yada, yada.
But he's done that already, right? He's proven that. He's not being just a nice guy. He wants that net. And he wouldn't be in the league if that wasn't part of his character. But Spencer took the ball in November, and he just kind of worked out. It was great with Spencer, and then when he went back in, he was pretty damn good, right? So each one of our goaltenders, and Spencer included, has a stretch of hockey where we needed them to be good because the other guy was either sick, gone, or out. And our goalie has stepped up for us each time during the year.
Do you, you expect him to be pretty damn good if he gets the chance again?
I absolutely, right? The longest run that I had gone on the playoffs to a final had both goaltenders.
All right, so you guys.
Thank you, guys.